We're here at the Polish Institute of International Affairs Strategic Arc Conference, and joining me now is Xavier Chatel, the Advisor for Strategic Affairs to French President Emmanuel Macron. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, concerning security assistance to Ukraine, we all know that Ukraine's in a difficult situation right now. What more can France do to help the Ukrainians defend themselves against Russian aggression?
So we already do a lot. We've signed with Ukraine after the Vilnius summit an agreement, a bilateral agreement on security, in which we pledged up to 3 billion euros of military assistance, and we had given already a combined sum of about 3.8 billion euro in military assistance. So we're already doing many things. Some of them are fairly visible. I would mention in particular what we do with long-range strikes with the Scalp missiles that the Ukrainians are particularly fond of. But in February, President Macron organized a conference in Paris with 20 plus heads of state and government, precisely to look at what we can do together to help more in a more acute way Ukraine, and we identified a number of areas. So one of them is ammunition, and here we work with our Czech partners on some aspect of their initiative. One of them is long-range fire, and here I mentioned the Scalp missiles, but there's also more things we can do with guided bombs, and also with identifying with other countries who has those capabilities, which are so important for Ukraine's ability to defend itself against the Russian aggression. And there's other lines of activity, particularly doing maintenance of equipment and maybe even production of military equipment in Ukraine. And here the French company KNDS is going to open a facility in Ukraine, and that's going to be, of course, more directly helpful to the Ukrainians. So we're really trying in a very systematic way with our partners to look at what we can do, sometimes in a bit of a disruptive way.
Certainly. Now, we all know that the promise to provide 1 million shells for Ukraine fell a little bit short. I think we've come to the realization in Europe that the defense industry and its production capabilities, well, they're limited. What is France going to do to increase the European capacity in the defense industry so that it can help not only in Ukraine, but help defend us here, all of us NATO countries?
So I think what you're mentioning is part of a broader endeavor. So on a national basis, we've been working on what we call our war economy. So we've been working with all companies to increase their footprint, to reduce their, the time that it takes to manufacture the ammunition, the missiles, all the equipment which is necessary. It's been successful, but we can always do more in that. And then at a European level, there's a number of discussions which will, take shape also with the European defense strategy, the European defense investment program, and with all these things, we hope to beef up the European capabilities. It all takes some time to do, but the level of commitment is really ironclad.
And concerning Polish-French bilateral relations, we've also seen somewhat of a rebirth, if you will. I wouldn't say that it was ever bad, but we definitely see new enthusiasm towards the Weimar format, among others. So tell me, what's ahead of us in terms of Polish and French bilateral relations?
So I will start with this. Poland is key for us in the way we approach European security. And that's what the President expressed in a landmark speech at Bratislava, in which he really explains that we want to work in depth with, Central, Eastern, Northern Europe, and Poland is really a key country from that point of view. So we want to increase our cooperation. That's why we want also to participate in events like Stategic Arc and in other events organized by Poland. There's been a number of contacts between the heads of states and the heads of government. I mentioned earlier the meeting that the French president organized in February to look at our options to help Ukraine more. President Duda was present in this. And then there's been, of course, contact with Prime Minister Tusk in the last few months. And we are willing to intensify these exchanges. There's going to be a draft treaty of cooperation between our two countries, which is currently in discussion, and which will also cover a security dimension. And this will, I think, help shore up our defense and our security together. And I would say also we have areas in our defense industry in which we can work more intensively together. There's proposals which have been made on both sides, and hopefully they will prosper.
Well, as long as there's just proposals, then I won't ask you the details about that. But we do have the 75th anniversary of NATO coming up in Washington, D.C. in July. What are your expectations for that summit? I know a lot of people have different expectations. What are France's expectations of that milestone summit coming in July?
So this summit will take place at a moment which is going to be sensitive for many reasons. Some have to do with the dynamics in Ukraine. So the supplemental was voted, and the more resistance is coming from the US after a moment of interruption, I dare say. And so the first question I think would be, what is the state of the war in Ukraine, and what more can we do to assist Ukraine? You would have all the relevant allies around the table to discuss this. And also one of the big questions is going to be what sort of language the allies can agree on with respect to the future relationship of Ukraine to NATO. And I expect this is going to be, just like in Vilnius, one of the hot topics of the meeting. And then, of course, this will take place at a moment when there is domestic political evolution. Some countries will just have had their elections, some will have their forthcoming elections, etc. So this will probably inform, as always it does, the domestic politics of member states, inform the successful execution of the summit. But I think the degree of allied solidarity and the degree of commitment in support of Ukraine is very strong.
And let's hope that that continues. Xavier Chatel Advisor for Strategic Affairs to President Emmanuel Macron, thank you very much for joining us today on TVP World.
Thank you.